Thanks again to everyone for coming. This is our weekly Kafka live stream. Today, we will be talking about GitOps for Kafka, what that means, what it entails, and how to do it right. Again, this is our weekly sessions. We do this every Thursday at this exact time. Definitely tune in next week as well for Connectors as Code. But today we're talking about GitOps for Kafka. And today I'm joined by our good friend Ivan from Octamus. Ivan, are you presenter now? Are you able to speak? Come online. How's it going?
Hello everyone. I truly hope so. I hope I'm audible. So hello everyone from the Zagreb.
Perfect. Yeah, if I can hear you just fine, looking good. And for those who don't know, Octamus is our delivery partner. So they offer expert Kafka consultations. If you ever need expert eyes or hands-on keyboard, you've got a tricky issue you're running through, or just making sure everything is set up correctly and you're following best practices, definitely check out Octamus, and you can have Ivan himself working on your infrastructure. Great to have you on, Ivan. I know you're a bit of expert in this field, something you're very well versed in. So with that, we can kick it off, and I'll hand it off to you to define GitOps for our crowd today.
Yeah, hello everyone once again. I wouldn't call myself really an expert, but yeah. Yeah, today, as you mentioned, so we'll try to talk a little bit about GitOps and what it entitles, what it really is, and whether you can maybe utilize it in your own organization and how it can be maybe used within a Kafka ecosystem. So starting with it, you'll find in front of yourself very complex code that you might find on many websites. And not to drill about it, I would like to first start with the most important part, and that's the GitOps word itself. So let's try first to decipher what is the name coming from. So as you might notice, it's a two-part word which starts with Git. You have Git and the ops. Git as a open source version control system, and the ops as an orchestration process or processes that are being used within the software development. So simply to put, not to go through, GitOps is the distillation of the best practices for managing blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Let's just simply put that GitOps is a process of automating IT infrastructure using infrastructure as a code, software development best practices such as Git, code review, and CI/CD. You can call it even as an evolution of infrastructure as code, which is basically a DevOps practice used for provisioning and configuring the testing and deployment environments using scripts that are basically treated as a part of the application code. So if you go to the next slide, as I said, as I mentioned in a couple of last sentences, there are three main pillars. The first pillar is infrastructure as a code, something that is a source of truth that you have version controlled, where you have a pull request, which provides you some sort of trail or audit log, something that offers you security. And then you have a CI/CD pipelines, the automation, which is helping you to strive to do the work for you to make it more confident to roll out stuff. So that's something that is basically the holy triangle of the GitOps. Moving to the next slide.
Yeah,
Uh,
perfect. And before we do, I just want to touch on something that you briefly mentioned, which I think is important, is that as we're talking about these technical pieces that consist of GitOps, it's also the ops part too. So it's the day-to-day workflows and the governance structures, approval processes that make up this sort of paradigm that we refer to as GitOps. If I'm not wrong there, Ivan.
yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of it. Yeah. And one thing that usually when you go inside of the GitOps a little bit, when you drill it down, when you try to read about it, you don't really come across of the state reconciliation as a statement, something that it is not immediately mentioned, and only when you are trying to implement it within your organization, you start noticing it, how really important it might be. So it's not a pillar, but it's one of the most, not to say most important parts, but the second, which should give, where you should give the second priority, something that it might help you not to drift, not to be not aware that your infrastructure drifted apart. It offers you some sort of sense of security that even if you drifted, that you don't really ruin your infrastructure with. If someone pushed something to your infrastructure without doing the merge request, it made some sort of a hack. It really helps you to find out the drift and then to fix it, and not to really just merge your second pull request on top of it and kill half of the infrastructure. So state reconciliation is something to really look into and to be really aware of as you drill down and you start implementing the GitOps within your organization.
Makes total sense. You're defining everything as code, but then that process of deploying and making sure everything is like for
Yeah, so that you really have what is in declared state in Git, that it is also there in your actual state, in your infrastructure or resources, components that are related to your infrastructure.
Yeah, I like how the arrow goes back and forth too. So as
Yeah.
you make changes in the actual state, you hopefully expect that to be declared.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Now,
But
why?
yeah, so that's I believe the if you try to present the GitOps to your management, first question would be, why do you want that? How that might help you? So the GitOps makes the provisioning and provisioning of infrastructure easier, faster, and more scalable. In, let's say, conventional infrastructure management, it requires from developer to first file some sort of a ticket or email a request to the IT ops team whenever they want some sort of provisioning of infrastructure or cloud infrastructure resources. Then, and only then, the IT ops reviews and logs every request in a queue, and then manually allocates the requested resources for each and one of them to be manually executed. Now, with the GitOps and the holy grail of the three pillars that we mentioned, this becomes much more automated, much more easier to do, where you see the increased productivity, as it is much more easier. You're becoming more confident because automation is doing job for you. We all know that we humans are, maybe someone would say, the cleverest on planet Earth, but the robots sometimes do the job much more efficiently than we do. So if you have an automation which does the one thing, it's going to do one thing and only, and it knows to do the best. So you become more confident, and therefore you have much faster and frequent deployments, and if something goes out, you can easily roll back. On top of it, you do also have a safer environment where you have your approvals, you have segregation of duties up front. What do you want from your infrastructure? What are all the requests that you're going to create? And you have the audit in the end with all of these merge requests with version control. You have traceable changes where you always can go back and see what exactly happened, why it happened, and how you can improve it. And that's mainly because today's infrastructure is much more dynamic due to the API-driven cloud environments or even on-prem that enables organization to provision and decommission the resources in seconds rather than the long commitments that require to deploy to the legacy infrastructure.
Yep. And if, like you said, I love that phrasing. If you're going to management and trying to espouse GitOps and trying to include that in your workflows, these are great ways and points to bring to them as why it's important. But also, if your management's coming to you and saying everything needs to be defined as code, you need to be following GitOps. And these are the reasons why.
Absolutely. Those are the bullet points at which you win your management. Yeah. And in the beginning, we said that we're going to drill a little bit down into how we can do it in Kafka. Of course, in Kafka ecosystem, we are all Kafka tiers, and we want to see how we can do GitOps in Kafka, and whether there are any components that for which we can do, and there are plenty of them. Most likely, you are much known which are those. So you can start with whole infrastructure, beginning with Kafka clusters, Kafka Connect clusters, schema registries, anything as such, to do all the resources and components such as topics, ACLs, quotas that you want to manage per namespace or per client or however you want to put it. Then we have also the applications such as connectors, lenses, SQL processors, Kafka streams, and in the end, the entities such as data policies or alerts, something that you might want to, for example, you have requirement that you have to, whenever you create a topic, that with the topic, it has to be associated some sort of data policies that you mask your data, or when you create connectors that you immediately have associated alerts with it, that you cannot really deploy the connector without alerts. So with all of this, you can really, in the end, you can really create the pipelines that suits you, because in the end, that's what GitOps is. It enables you to create tooling and define all those components and services through the use of desired state, file like much a Terraform and the other infrastructure as code tools. So you can play with it as much as you want, and that's something that the GitOps kind of enabled you to do it. Yeah, and as we are going through, basically, maybe let's go into the first example to see how maybe example of GitOps in real life that I stumbled upon in my past experiences. In current example, you can see basically a Kafka cluster or multiple ones. You can see the CI/CD pipeline. You can see the Git repo, basically a YAML or source of truth. So all these three pillars which are necessary in order for you to create let's say a perfect GitOps approach. We're also going to see here some small drawbacks of GitOps as well. It's not all shiny and rainbows there. So when we look into it, we see a use case where a client is actually using a Git and the YAML, where engineer is coming, creating a YAML of, let's say, topics, ACLs, quotas, whatever it is needed for it to be created. There is a pipeline that it's linting the YAML, doing some other things, checkups, and some of the community-made CLI, which is pushing those resources to the cluster, which is being chosen, let's say, by the structure of the directory or namespace or things as such. So one caveat is, for example, we see that the connection with that CLI it's not possible to connect it to some cloud environment. We're going to drill down in that a little bit later, but the one major drawback is, while this approach is amazing when you have a low scale environments, small infrastructure, but imagine where you're getting pull requests, a couple of pull requests per day, which you need to review. But imagine you are in a huge environment, a huge scale where you have 50, 60 clusters. And of course, you have only 3-4 Kafka admins, as it usually goes, to manage all of these. And then you have gazillion engineers, which need to create so many topics. And there's so many merge requests you have to go through. It becomes so hard and such a big toil to Kafka admins to manage all of these. So the question then which appears is, whether do we have the right maybe tooling? Do we need a better tooling on the market? And to answer that, we have plenty of tooling that is already open source that we can use, that we can utilize, that we can build upon, starting from the Confluent operator or StreamZ operator if you wanna use your Kafka within the Kubernetes, or Terraform in general, or Terraform provider, or Terraform in general, where you can build your own providers, or Confluent Terraform provider, or many CLIs in the market, which now more and more offer immediately connection towards some cloud Kafka clusters. So being said, going towards next slide, we can see a chaos, possibly. We can see so many tooling. Everything is, of course, we have source of truth connected to the Git, but with so many tooling and with so many ways of deployment, how do you choose correct one? And what if you are working in an organization which has a mix of Kafka clusters? You are working in an organization which is using Kafka on-prem, Kafka on cloud. It uses also in Kubernetes. Creating framework to all of that might become a little bit harder, or you have multiple, as I experienced in the past, you create multiple frameworks. So you have one GitHub repository for each Kafka deployment, one on-prem, one on cloud. So how to explain your engineer, hey, for on-prem, you go here, for cloud, you go there, for Kubernetes, you go there. And an engineer comes after a couple of months, has to go and see, where is my topic? He has no idea where he should go, or she has to go into. They have no idea. They come back to you, you go back and forth, you have to educate them. So it becomes really, as you go to the other slide, it becomes very, very messy. We go.
And I just want to highlight that the two issues seem super related because it seems like it would be really susceptible to sprawl, both on that initial issue you mentioned of you're supporting a gazillion engineers and developers who want to get their asset deployed and tested as quickly as possible. But then also your organization is operating from a multi-Kafka, multi-cloud world where you've got Confluent Cloud running alongside MSK, and then your local development environment, and an on-prem Strimzi halfway across the world. That multiplies the number of pull requests because then you have different standards and different GitHub repos. I'm getting a bit of a headache here.
Yeah, different convention, different tooling that you use. It becomes really messy. And that's where you have to, as an engineer or the owner of the platform, you have to step up and try to possibly abstract all of that tooling and all of that framework somehow for the user. So for them that it's that when they come to your platform, that it's really that it's the same thing for them, whether you are on-prem, that they don't even have to know where they are. They just have to come and with the single process, basically do the very same thing.
I think that's a great segue into talk about what we are building here at Lenses to one, make sure that your organization can get all of those advantages of being GitOps practiced in a full CI/CD pipeline for these real-time assets, but address the issues that we're seeing in the market when these companies are making these initiatives, the issues that they have from homegrown tooling, really complex CI/CD flows, and as we mentioned, a variety of standards to adapt to their multi-Kafka, multi-cloud ecosystem. And to solve those problems, that is why we have a core focus on our product roadmap for Kafka assets as code from an intuitive user interface. So we are lowering the barrier to entry for technical talent required to be effective in real-time data, enabling a business analyst to come online, deploy a topic and configure that, as well as the associated assets, connectors, ACLs, but still following those Kafka as code first practices. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. I'll bring Andrew up online. Andrew, how are we doing today?
I'm all right. I'm not too bad. I can't complain today. The sun has just come out. So I'm happy to have a chat about lenses and GitOps and what we're doing here. Ops, it's awesome, but it's also quite complicated. And now we're in a world where more and more business users are getting on top of Kafka, right? You've built your data mesh. I think I talked about that before. And there's more applications being built, and there's more and more business users coming on board. And speaking to Ivan earlier today, he was telling me about where he had to go around teaching people how to learn Git. There's also one person on this call, I won't name them, but admitted to me he didn't know what Git was when he joined Lenses a few years ago, right? What is a YAML as well? So there's a whole set of complications in there that you technically also have to educate people on. Even if you look at the YAML specs, there's Confluent versus Strimzi, there's a complex schema in there and involved as well that you have to learn and understand what it's doing. If you think about Google Docs, right? Business users are very good at coming in, doing suggestions, editing everything that's going on there. It's version tracking. It's the same thing as well, but you don't really care. I certainly don't care how Google Docs are doing or their tracking of the version history, but it's the same principle, right? But in Lenses, we're very good at doing the UI, giving you the visibility, means you can do things very quickly. But as you come into the scale, when you need the governance, you have to start fitting into the CI/CD practices. You have to start fitting into the GitOps flow. So that's what we've been working on. So I have to stress it's a journey. So if we move on to the next slide, we can show you where we're heading in our journey. So the first part of this journey is to represent all the resources in Lenses as a YAML, right? So that we started in 5.5 with connectors. We're moving on to topics. We're going to add SQL processes, alerts, data policies, everything, right? The first thing is we want to be able to download that, view it, download it, and upload it again into Lenses via the YAML, right? So you can go into the connectors, you can download, you can see the configuration of YAML, you can download it, you can then check it in, and then you can do the pull request, right? That's the first phase of it. In Lenses 6, when it's going to come along, we will introduce direct pull request directly from inside of Lenses. So you don't have to worry about stepping out of lenses again, doing your pull request. So then we do the write into the Git side of it. And then as we move on past lenses 6, we'll start doing this reconciliation process, where lenses will look at your Git repo or be notified, for example, via a webhook that there's been a change. It will say, look, oh, there's a new connector. I'll create that. Oh, this connector configuration has changed. I'll create as a new topic, etc. It will do this reconciliation directly just against your Git repo. So I don't need Terraform. I don't need all these other things. I don't care if I'm on-prem. Don't care if I'm in the cloud, right? The only two things you need is three things. You need lenses, you need a Git repo, and your Kafka for us to apply against. And this is where we're going. And it is a journey, right? And it's not fully, the UX, I would say, isn't fully designed how we do that. We have a topology at the moment. Can we start displaying the design state versus the actual state and seeing the overlap as well, and having a better, simpler way to do UX that GitOps that everyone can handle via lenses. So if we move on to the next slide, because I'm conscious of time as well, this is just an example, right? We've already got it. Check out 5.5. You can see this in action for the connectors. We'll be adding it in for the YAML. So we'll have a standard definition for all the different resources. You can create it the normal way with the UX, right? And then you can download your YAML. Next, then we'll do the pull request into Git, and then we'll do the reconciliation here. Effectively, the UX of lenses in some cases will become a wizard to generate the YAML, right? Because that's ultimately what it is. It's in some cases the API spec. So this is just an example here where we would end up having the reconciliation built into lenses directly. So here you can imagine that you could have either lenses in your production environment put into a read-only mode, and it's just watching Git for changes and applying them, and then we'll show you what's being changed as it goes along, or something that will be an approval step inside of lenses to accept the pull requests that are then automatically applied onto the system for you. So this is where we're going. First journey's been 5.5, 5.6 will add to it. Lenses 6 will have the ability to do pull requests, and then we'll be moving on as we go forward, doing the reconciliation and bringing that more and more into the UX experience as well. So the idea is then you have a fully audited, compliance governed pipeline that your users actually don't know is there. Like I say, I'm not interested in how Google Docs do their version tracking. I just want to use it. I want to use it to be productive. And I think that's my take on it, Adam.
Much appreciated, Andrew. But I think our audience is going to be hearing a lot more about what we have in the pipeline for this. Like I mentioned, more and more when we talk to prospects and customers and partners, this is increasingly a big area of focus, either initiative that they're getting started with or an area that they're looking to improve deeply on. And I think it's the balancing the benefits of being GitOps first and Kafka as code first principles with that trend of data democratization and opening up access to observability into what's going on and the ability to edit these assets once they're deployed to less technical users, and then also enabling the faster onboarding of your most advanced developer, giving them a tool to deploy Kafka assets as quickly as they need to across the entire estate so that you can deliver value in real time to your customers. So again, we'll be talking more and more about this, especially the connectors as code piece next week. To join the conversation, you can join our Slack community here. I think somebody will put a link in the chat. You can contact our entire team here, ask questions about anything we presented today. In fact, we still have a couple minutes left. So if you have questions about what we presented today, please feel free to raise a hand, come online, let us know if there's something we should touch a little bit more deeply on. Or if you're using GitOps today for Kafka assets, let us know what your experience is. Is it going swimmingly? Do you have the tools that you need? Are there any issues you come across? And are you the one creating the pull request and trying to get things approved? Or are you the core data platform team approving things? Always eager to hear about how things are going in your Kafka world. And if we're feeling shy, definitely feel free to ask in chat as well, or again, reach out to us on community Slack. This has been our weekly Kafka live stream. Thank you so much, Octamus and Ivan. Thank you, Andrew, for coming online. and letting us know what we've got in the works. Again, definitely tune in next week as well. We'll be covering connectors as code, everything we have released in the 5.5 version of Lens's platform, which is now generally available. I've been your host, Adam Noonan. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your week.